Hello, and once again, welcome to another week of Spiritism, a closer look. This is our program number 19. I'm Luis Lima from Florida, and welcome to the show once again. We want to always tell you that you can participate with us via Kardec Radio. KardecRadio.com is our website. You can always go there, make your comments, suggestions, questions, if you will. We're open for all that kind of thing. So, and welcome once again. All right, so we have been talking about a lot of different things. So we decided last week to listen to some of the people asking for kind of a global overview. So that's what we did last week. We took the whole 17 weeks that we had spoken here about everything evolution, and we kind of put together. We highlighted the most important points and addressed some of the questions that we had been receiving and suggestions, comments, all of that. So this week, we're going to jump to something still within evolution, but we're going to jump to something new. We're going to jump to reincarnation, which is a part of evolution as well. Before we go into today's actual topic, as always, we go back to last week to address and comment on the question, spirittrivia.com. So you can always go to evolution.spirittrivia.com. At the end of each program, we put a question for you to participate with us. You can cast your answers. And once again, we don't collect any information from you, no names, no usernames, no email addresses, no IP addresses, nothing like this. It's totally 100% anonymous. It's just that you can participate with us. We are all learning after all, right? So that was the question for last week, right here. In a human body about to be formed, the union between the incarnating spirit and the organic matter occurs. We have four answers, four possibilities. Number one, when the mother's perispirit allows the incarnating spirit to take control of the process. Second option, at birth. Okay, so the union between organic matter and spirit at birth. Third option, at conception. And last option, when the fetus is fully developed. This question here is actually going to be addressed in more details today. Okay, so we kind of put the question ahead a little bit for you to see what's coming. Okay, the correct answer here is letter C, at conception. Let me just make a quick comment even before we go into more details on the subject. If you see here, option number A or letter A, when the mother's perispirit allows the incarnating spirit to take control of the process. When the union between the incarnating spirit and organic matter occurs, the spirit is in control, not the mother's perispirit. We're going to comment on this a little bit. The spirit is fully in control. Okay, so the correct answer for this is at conception. And this is actually described in detail. Actually, we're going to go through this tonight. Allan Kardec telling us in details in the book Genesis. Okay, so let's go to reincarnation. So we've been talking about races and kingdoms and evolution of kingdoms and how different races came about and so on and so on. So these are all progressive cycles, one within another, one inside the other. It's a sequence of progressive cycles. So we get to the point where somebody's going to reincarnate within a race, within a kingdom, a regular human kingdom. So someone is going to reincarnate. So obviously, there's a whole process about this thing. But again, we are focusing on evolution. So we are not going to discuss here today about the classic reincarnation reasons, any of that, because that's not the point today. We are focusing on evolution. So reincarnating is a process, and it's a cycle as well, because we reincarnate several times over as needed. So there's a process, and it's a growing process. So every reincarnation is better than the one before, and so on. So that's exactly what evolution is about. You get better every time you do the same thing. So let's get started here with the first idea brought to us by Allan Kardec. He will mention that in order to study the reincarnation process, okay, what happens for the incarnation to take place, he divides the process in 6 steps. And we're going to talk about the same 6 steps in details. It's all in the book of Genesis if you want to go there. Actually, I encourage you to go there and read about it. It's really nice and interesting. So, first thing, conception. That's what the question we just discussed, the Spirit Trivia, was about. So let's see what we are told by Allan Kardec and the spirits, of course, with him writing the codification. What do they bring to us? First of all, they will say that a fluidic tie, so fluidic, right? Fluidic tie, which is nothing more than an extension of the perispirit. Okay, so an extension of the perispirit connects to the zygote at the moment of conception. So it's very clear here, and that answers, by the way, the question that we just spoke about, the Spirit Trivia. It's very clear that the moment of conception is when the fluidic tie coming from the incarnating perispirit connects to the organic matter, the zygote, which is a combination of male and female protoplasms. The fluidic tie at the moment of conception. They will say more. The fluidic tie, right? So it took place at the moment of conception. The fluidic tie tightens as the fetus develops. Meaning, in the very beginning, okay, in the very first moment, there is a fluidic tie, but it's really not tightened enough. You know, it's a light connection. It's something that can, using materialistic words, right, that can easily break, if you will. So you will get better. You will be a thicker, if you will, connection as time goes by, as the fetus develops. In the beginning, it's very thin. And the spirits will tell us, under the influence of the fetus vital principle, the perispirit is united molecule by molecule to the body. Okay, so we're going to go a little bit easy on this particular phrase here. First of all, vital principle. That's one of the chapters that we discussed in the past. We spent maybe 2 or 3 weeks on it. And the vital principle is something that has to do with the organic matter. Vital principle is what makes inert, inorganic matter become organic matter. It's when there's infusion of life into inert matter. So going back to the phrase here, under the influence of that, the vital principle from the fetus. So you see, the control is not the mother. The mother is not the controlling center. So the perispirit, which perispirit? The incarnating spirit's perispirit is united molecule by molecule to the body. So it's like you're copying, if you will, the perispirit and making a copy of it and stamping it onto the organic matter. That's what the Spirits tells us. If you go to the book of Genesis, there's a little bit more text on it, but I'm bringing over here the global idea on the subject. So here we go. The fetus vital principle, okay, which is something that the fetus as a spirit already learned how to deal with that. Remember, spirit comes as an individualization of the intelligent principle, which one day before that was the spiritual principle. So this progress here, this evolution here, this we spoke about this in the very beginning, the first 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks of our talks here. This is what Allan Kardec calls the conception, and he makes these comments. Then there's a next stage. By the way, there's another phrase here. I'm sorry. The spirit takes root in the fetus. Right, so that was kind of clear from the first line on the same slide that you see there. The spirit is in control from the get-go. Okay. All right, so then we go to the next step, the next level, which is what Allan Kardec calls a state of confusion. Okay, what is a state of confusion? So let's just think about this. The spirit is preparing to take control of the organic matter through a fluidic tie coming from its perispirit. And think about this, the spirit is this huge energy, it's pure energy, right? There's no matter, it's pure energy. And it has to fit, maybe fit is a good word to represent the idea. It has to fit in a one cell body, which is the zygote, the first cell. So you have a tremendous amount of energy that needs to be contained into one cell. So it's like you have to compress an amount of energy to fit into a tight space. As this happens, the spirit gets into what they call a state of confusion. So this is what they say. Since the spirit is held by the fluidic tie, that we already spoke about, that attaches it to the fetus, the spirit experiences a state of confusion. So it's this going through this process. It's going to change, if you will, it's going to change realities, right? It's going to come into a new world. So there is a transition. This is all part of a huge transition, starting with the conception. So then we go to step number 3. Step number 3, we're going to call this loss of all self-awareness. So the spirit sets up its fluidic tie into the organic matter. It gets into a state of confusion because it's changing worlds, if you will. And then it goes through a loss of all self-awareness. So this state of confusion, we could say, imagine you're about to faint for some reason, doesn't really matter. You're about to faint. So you get like a little bit dizzy, you get confused, you kind of start losing your senses until you really faint. And now you're down on the floor, so you lost it. You lost all your awareness. So that's more or less what happens here. And this is how they describe. The state of confusion increases as the tie strengthens. And during the last moments, the spirit loses all self-awareness. Which last moments is he referring to here? Last moments of this process, the progress of being inside a womb and all of that. Okay, about to be born. So state of confusion, which is kind of, I'm getting dizzy and loss of all awareness, we just faint. We could use that analogy. And that's an interesting thing. They say the spirit loses all self-awareness. So, in the last moments, it's completely detached from the reality that he or she or whatever spirit was into and coming to. After that, birth. Okay, on birth, well, we know about that. That's already coming into the material world. And they will say the spirit is never a conscious witness of its own birth. Why? Because it lost all self-awareness in the previous step. So it loses completely self-awareness, all of it, and it's not a witness of its own birth. Interesting, right? Okay, that was step number 4. Then the spirit is now a physical body. It's a baby, right? So there was a birth, and now we have a baby. And as a baby, it's going to develop from that into an adulthood. But there are things that need to happen from the perspective, the Spiritist perspective. One of them is recovery. Recover from what? If you faint, okay, when you come back to your senses, you kind of still dizzy in the beginning. You kind of, oh, who am I? Who am I? What am I doing here? What are these people doing here? So you need to kind of recover from that. You need to, restate your awareness and get centered again, and then get on with your life. It's the same thing here. So recovery, what do they say? How do they tell us? At birth, the spirit begins to recover its faculties. It doesn't say at birth the spirit recovers its faculties. Begins to recover. Begins to recover leaves a trace of there's something that's going to happen for quite some time. We're going to have a process here. Begins to. There's a process that's going to take place for this full recovery. Just like when you get out of a hospital and you get home or you're sick, it could be a simple cold. When you get out of it, there's still, even when you're feeling okay, there's still a period of 1 day, 2 days that you're still like, yeah, so that's what it is. Another thing they tell us about recovery. So the baby, right, the spirit is going to recover its faculties. The faculties develop the organs that serve for their manifestation. This is what it means. For example, imagine Mozart. Okay, let's just say that Mozart is going to reincarnate. And he is going to be the greatest piano player ever. Okay, so with 6 months old, you pick up Mozart and put him in front of a piano, sit him in the bench and put him in front of a piano. What do you think is going to happen? I think he's going to fall. He cannot even be steady on the bench. He's just going to fall. And then you're going to look at it and say, how come this is the biggest piano player ever? He cannot even stand straight into a bench. Well, you see, the organs that are going to make it happen are not developed. They have to develop. That's part of the recovery of the faculties. He had this person, this incarnating spirit, has to go through a period in which its organs, its muscles, its whatever it is, right, get developed enough so that ability can be portrayed in the physical life. Imagine somebody like, say, Michael Phelps, right, one of the greatest swimmers ever. So Michael Phelps is born, and you take him into your hands, and you say, this is going to be the greatest swimmer ever. And you put him, with 6 months old, you put him in a pool. What do you think is going to happen? Disaster. Yes, disaster. Because all that he needs for to be the greatest swimmer ever, none of these organs, none of these things are developed. He needs time. He needs to be, these parts of the body need to be developed. The muscles, the abilities, the chest, breathing. It's a whole process. That is all part of recovery. The spirit does not have its full faculty on day one of its incarnation. It's still a process. So that's what they call recovery. And then we go through, I would say, a last step in which more than a baby, now you're already an infant and a young person, and that's what we call refinement. What is refinement? Is really focus on the abilities that were going to be part of this incarnation that this spirit is in, and they're going to be there's going to be some focus on it. Just like we said, Michael Phelps was an example, Mozart was another one. So this refinement is what kind of crowns the reincarnation process. The spirit recovers its self-awareness. So now the spirit is going to be a point where it's going to know, I'm able to do this and I'm not able to do that. That's self-awareness, right? So we will recover all of its self-awareness, but on the other hand, it loses the memory of its past. It doesn't lose the faculties, the qualities, or the aptitudes acquired, but it loses the memory of the past. So you will have all the abilities. You will bring and develop whatever is necessary for these aptitudes and abilities to be part of this life, this incarnation. But it will lose the memory of the past. So it's like a scale, right? You gain here by recovering self-awareness, but you lose here by forgetting everything of the past. Past meaning past lives, past incarnations. So this is the process that Allan Kardec, with the Concourse of the Spirits, described in the Book of Genesis. We put some graphic images here and some simple phrases extracted from the text, but I really encourage you to go back to the book and take a look at it. Okay, so now let's go to, by the way, there's a mistake on the word reincarnation here, I'm sorry. We're going to go back to Andre Luiz. Andre Luiz also touches on studying the incarnation, starting a new lifetime. And some interesting information comes from what it writes. So first of all, we already saw that the beginning is a conception. Let's go a little bit more details here. So in the beginning, what happens is the male sperm, right, will be in physical contact with the egg. How does it happen? We know that. We know from science. Millions and millions of sperms will be around the surface, the outer surface of the egg, but only one of them is going to penetrate the egg. So there's a journey here. That one lucky guy, let's put it this way, it has to go from the outer surface of the egg all the way inside to the center of the egg. There's a physical distance there. Okay, it's a physical, the egg is something physical, so there's a physical distance that this sperm has to perform. And it takes about 4 minutes from this to happen. And so from the boundary, once it starts and penetrates the egg, it will take about 4 minutes to get to the center of the egg. Okay, when it gets to the center of the egg, that's when conception takes place. And conception means there's going to be a fusion of these two things, the sperm and the egg. There's going to be a fusion. I'm going to make them both one. Okay, the process, and it's a process. Fusion doesn't happen in a snap of fingers. It is a process. How long does this process take? Well, we're going to talk about. When this happens, when the fusion happens, remember, the perispirit of the incarnating spirit launches a fluidic tide and attaches to the organic matter. So at conception, when the fusion, okay, takes place, that's when the fluidic tide comes in. The process takes about 15 minutes. The fusion process between the two protoplasms takes about 15 minutes. So we're already up to like 19 minutes here. Okay. And then after those 15 minutes, then we have one new zygote under control of the incarnating spirit. Again, in the beginning, the fluidic tie is very thin, but it will tighten as the process goes along, okay? All right, after conception, what happens? We saw that 9 months after that, birth. And after that, the next important thing is at about 4 years old is when the rate of forming new neurons. In the old days, we thought that neurons were formed until 4 years old, and that was it. When you're about 4 years old, no new neurons would be formed. Well, we know today that's not exactly what it is. Neurons they continue, but the rate that this happens is not the same, according to information from science. So 4 years old becomes an important reference, an important, I would say, a milestone. And the last milestone is at 7 years old, when kind of the personality is complete. So it's when everything that is needed for this new life, this reincarnation, is in place. So all the abilities have been set. Of course, you're still going to have to develop parts of the body for those abilities to be able to manifest. But everything is ready to go. So it's about 7 years old. Those milestones are important things. Spirit Andre Luiz talks about this in more details. We're not going to do here today because that's not really our purpose to go in details about this particular thing. We're looking from a higher standpoint, more like an overview of the process of reincarnating, the process itself. Okay, but that's an important thing. Okay, so now we're going to put this that we saw here together with everything else that we spoke about, especially evolution of the kingdoms. So there are some questions that come from science that we don't have the answers. We as humans, we do have questions about evolution that we don't have the answers from the provider of the truth, which is science. So let's bring the following idea. We are here in the material plane. When the time comes, we're going to go to the other side, spiritual plane. Then we come back. That's the cycles of reincarnation, one after the other, as many as needed for us to achieve perfection. Okay? So at times we are here in the material world realm. Sometimes we are in the spiritual realm. So when you and I look at this screen as is, it's kind of easy to understand also. Part of the process happens in the material world and the other part spiritual. Then it comes back to material, spiritual. So there is evolution in two worlds. That's exactly the name of the book, right? Yeah, part of the evolution happens here, incarnated, and the other part happens, but not here, incarnated. It happens in the spiritual plane. Now, if we subscribe to a paradigm that looks only at the material things, we are going to have missing links. Because, for example, if you are at this point and the next thing you find is on this point, how are you going to answer? What happened here? Things were this way, suddenly things are that way. Well, how come they go from A to B? How come one thing became the other? You see, that's the limitation of the materialistic paradigm. If you are looking only at the material line, you don't see, right, that I shaded in gray there. That's the ability of the eye representing in a visual figure. That eye does not see what happens in the spiritual world. And there are missing links now, right? There are questions of how come this thing became that. That's exactly what happens. And that's the reason for these missing links from science and different parts of different branches of science. We have missing links in several different branches of science, academic science, official science, because they are discarding, they are not considering, not taking into consideration what happens in the spiritual world, right? They are not concerned what happens with the intelligent principle alone, without matter, when it's discarnated, for example. And then Spirit Andre Luiz in the book Evolution in Two Worlds has a reference to this, to exactly this thing that we just discussed in this image that you see on the screen. Let's read what it says real quick and make some comments. So, through the birth and death of the form being a physical body, right? It refers to the spirit, the intelligent principle. It undergoes continuous modifications on the two planes in which it manifests itself. And that's the image that we see here. Sometimes it manifests in the material plane, sometimes in the spiritual plane. And Andre Luiz continues here. This is why many of the links of evolution have escaped the research of naturalists, right? Because they are looking through the eyes of a materialistic paradigm. They represent the stages of the fragmentary consciousness outside the corporeal field per se. In the extra-physical regions, where this incomplete consciousness continues to develop its subtle vehicle, classified at the point as to human protoform, corresponding to its degree of evolution. So it's very clear here that outside the corporeal field, meaning outside the material plane, evolution continues. So when there's another incarnation, when it comes back to the material or corporeal field, it is better than before, but you don't see that happening in the material plane alone. This takes place and it's orchestrated in the spiritual plane. So Andre Luiz, with this particular phrase from the book, Evolution in Two Worlds, kind of wraps up everything that we wanted to show today with the images that we try to, at least the image for this materialistic paradigm. It doesn't mean that they are blind. It means that their focus is on what happens in the material plane. That's all it is. It's a matter of criteria. The materialistic paradigm does not look into spiritual things. And that has to be respected, by the way, because it's a belief system. We want our belief system to be respected as well. It's just a matter of understanding the different criteria. We have ours, they have theirs, and other people have different lines of thought and different belief systems. So this is what we wanted to consider for bringing to you today. Again, the book of Genesis has valuable information. We brought some of it here today. Valuable information about the processes, the process of reincarnation, and how things go about. It's really very interesting, and I encourage you to go to the book and take a look at it. And once again, before we go, we invite you to go to our Spirit Trivia. So just go to Spirit Trivia, evolution.spirittrivia.com. If you're on a computer, you can just point your camera on a cell phone or a smartphone to the QR code on the top left of your screen. And it's going to take you directly to evolution.spirittrivia.com. And you can cast your answer for tonight's question. Okay, the question is up for a week until next week, next Wednesday. We will make comments and suggestions from you on the question. And once again, I really want to make this sure, participate with us. We do not collect any names or usernames, nothing like this. We do not collect email addresses, IP addresses. So it's a safe thing to do. Nobody's interested in any of that. We are spiritists trying to understand evolution of the intelligent principle. You and I being them as well. Okay, so thank you very much for participating today with us, and